This conversation finds us in the book of Mark, the Gospel according to Apostle Mark, chapter 14, verse 32 through 46. Let me just start off by saying, Happy Resurrection Day, Jesus Christ. Happy Resurrection Day. This time of the year, we celebrate, we recognize, and when I say we, I mean the whole world. We celebrate and recognize this week as Holy Week, when God raised Jesus Christ, his only begotten Son, up from the dead, after he had been crucified upon the cross and then buried in a tomb. John tells us that Jesus rising from the dead is our hope that we too, as believers in Jesus Christ, shall also one day rise and live with him. Everyone, and I do mean everyone, is going to cover Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection this week. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's much, I do mean much needed. It's the greatest story that's ever been told. As a matter of fact, it's the greatest life that's ever been lived. But what I would like to do today is to focus or refocus this conversation more on the question of how did we get here? Yes, how did we get here? But before I can answer that question, we have to go all the way back. And I do mean all the way back to the Garden of Eden. To the Garden of Eden where Adam and Eve were, to the root depends on where you're from, Texas or New Mexico, where everything started in the beginning. You see, everything has a beginning, or what I call a garden experience, if you will. If your husband is having a problem, if your wife is having a problem, if your marriage is having a problem, if your children or having some problems, if your friends or your co-workers or your job if there's a problem, if there's finances, if it's your body, if it's your health, if it's your mind, it all started in the garden. Disobedience and sin. Therefore, Jesus came to end it where it started, in the garden. Go with me to Mark 14, verse 32 to 46. 32 reads like this, and they came to a place which was named Gethsemane. And he said to his disciples, sit ye here while I shall pray. Verse 33. And he taketh with him Peter and James and John, and began to be sore amazed, and to be very heavy. 34. And saith unto them, my soul is exceeding sorrowful unto death. Tarry ye here and watch. 35. And he went forward a little and fell on the ground, and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. 36. And he said, Abba, Father, all things are possible unto thee. Take away this cup from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what thou wilt. 37. And he cometh and findeth them sleeping, and said unto Peter, Simon, sleepest thou? Couldest not thou watch 1 hour? 38. Watch ye and pray, lest ye enter into temptation. The spirit truly is ready, but the flesh is weak. 39. And again he went away and prayed and spake the same words. Verse 40. And when he returned, he found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. Neither wist they what to answer him. 41. And he cometh the third time and saith unto them, sleep on now, and take your rest. It is enough. The hour is come. Behold, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. 42. Rise up, let us go. Lo, he that betrayeth me is at hand. 43. And immediately, while he yet spake, cometh Judas, one of the 12, and with him a great multitude with swords and staves, from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. 44. And he that betrayed him had given them a token, saying, whomsoever I shall kiss, that same is he. Take him and lead him safely away. 45. And as soon as he was come, he goeth straightway to him, and saith, Master, Master, and kissed him. 46. And they laid their hands on him and took him. They're taking him to his destiny. Let's just go back and listen to Jesus' heart in this garden. Speaking of gardens, last week my daughter and I decided to put a garden in our backyard. And there are several steps that one must follow. You must dig up the ground and till the soil and get it all ready. And you must plant your seeds in the dirt. And then you have to cover them up, which is like a form of burying, if you will. And then you have to nurture the plants, feeding them water. And as they grow, guess what? You still have a responsibility because you got to keep the weeds out and all the bad insects out. We realized very quickly, in order to have a healthy garden, we had to obey the laws of gardening. It just don't pop up and take care of itself. No, there's some laws, there's some rules that apply to gardening. To have a positive harvest, you have to follow the laws of gardening. So let me keep it real. My daughter did most of the work. I'm what you call the financier. I called myself the manager, but she told me, no, you're not the manager now. We co-manage, but you're not the manager. So I see myself now being like a sous chef. I'm just kind of a brother who's helping out on the sideline. But in order to have a successful garden, we had to make sure that we had the right soil, the right fertilizer, the right compost. And we had to make sure we placed the garden in the right area in the backyard because some plants require more sunlight than others. How many of you know that what you put into your garden is what you get out of your garden? If you want a good harvest, you got to labor in that garden. If you want a good marriage, you got to labor in that marriage. If you want to be a good father, you got to labor in being a good father. If you want to be a good employee, you've got to labor. If you want to be a good person, you've got to labor in that thing. It just don't happen. If you want to be a good believer, you got to labor. Repeat after me. I must spend time in my garden. Let me say it again. I must spend time in my garden. Now, we all know the story of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. We all know the story. But there's a cause and effect to every story. A cause and effect, which is simply defined as the relationship between two things when one thing makes something else happen. If I eat too much food without exercising, I'm going to gain weight. See, that's cause and effect. There's always a cause and effect. I personally feel that we do a great job when it comes to explaining Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. But Jesus had a life also. Yeah, he had a life before his death, burial, and resurrection. I like to see it as the life, the death, the burial, and the resurrection. I call it the LDBR. Let me get you to think a little bit. I mean, just kind of creative thinking. We don't have this story in the Gospels. We don't have this story of Jesus' life, death, burial, and resurrection if we don't have that story back in Genesis, where Adam and Eve, disobedience and sin in the garden, caused this story to come to life. Do you realize that? We don't have this story if we don't have that story. There would be no need for this story because life would be good. Sin would be dead to all of us. Do you realize that? But as the saying goes, we can't put the genie back in the bottle. I just want you to think for a moment. What's done is done. Therefore, we have to deal with where our feet are planted firmly in our garden. Sin raised up in Adam and Eve. Therefore, God raised up Jesus in you and me. How blessed are we? God made a way out of no way. He sent his only begotten son, Jesus, to atone for all of mankind's sin, for all of mankind's disobedience. God sent us a substitute for a destitute situation. You see the word disobedience? It's simply failure or refusal to obey rules or someone in authority. And sin is just simply sin. Sin is an immoral act against divine law. Let me put this together. Disobedience, it simply ushers in sin. When you see someone being disobedient, you can best believe they have eaten something that was forbidden. It's like having weeds growing up in your garden, while at the same time your plants are just thriving, they're flourishing. But then you notice that your plants are mixing in with the weeds. You see, your plant's appetite begins to change, and they start having a thirst for feeding off the weeds. That's what sin does. It enters in as a part of your normal life, as a part of your normal gardening, if you will. And the weeds become your new appetite. That's what you let happen in your house. You let the weeds get in. You let sin get in. And your morals and your virtues and your integrity and your faith and everything that's around you is beginning to be choked out of you. All because you changed your appetite. This starts off with, and they came to a place which was named Gethsemane. And he said to his disciples, Jesus is talking to his 12 disciples, sit ye here while I pray. The other 9 had to sit right here. We know Judas is going to slip away. And verse 33 tells us that, and he taketh with him Peter and James and John, and began to be sore amazed and to be very heavy. I want you to feel the pain. I pray you can feel the pain. This is Jesus. He's in this flesh like you and I. Don't just run through this. So let's just slow up for a moment. We need to feel the burden of the cross. Jesus was born for this moment. But that doesn't make it any easier to swallow. No, it doesn't. Jesus is in the flesh like we all are. Apostle Paul tells us in the book of Hebrews, chapter 4, verse 15, for we have not a high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like we are, yet without sin. Jesus feels what we feel. He just doesn't sin like we do. In verse 34, it says, and saith unto them, my soul is exceeding sorrowful. This is Jesus talking to Peter, John, and James. Unto death. Tarry ye here and watch. The weight of the entire world is depending on Jesus, being the Messiah, being the Savior, in all of his divinity. At the same time, he's in all of his humanity. Jesus feels the pain that you feel. He feels the sadness of death when you lose a loved one. That's what Jesus feels. That's what he's feeling right now. It's pressing so much upon him that he shares this moment with his disciples, and he tells them that my soul is exceedingly sorrowful as he feels death upon him. Have you ever been so sick that it felt like death was present, and it was just a matter of time before it came and took you out? That's how Jesus is feeling. He can feel the heaviness of death. He is having a moment of what I would call heart palpitations and moments of anxiety and moments of just simply being a human being. He tells them to tarry. He says, watch, which is a posture of worship and prayer. It's a posture of praise and reflecting. 35 tells us that, and he went forward a little and fell on the ground and prayed that if it were possible that this hour might pass from him. Let's back it up a little bit. First of all, let's do with this. He fell on the ground. He didn't bow down. Now, I mean, that's respectful. He didn't kneel down. No, he didn't squat down. He wasn't standing up praying. He wasn't lying in the bed praying. The Bible says he fell down. He was prostrate on the ground. He hit it hard because that's how much weight's upon him. Do you feel the weight? Jesus. And then the Bible tells us, and he prayed that if it were possible that the hour might pass from him. What you talking about, Jesus? Here's where we see humanity speaking out to divinity, asking a question. Jesus in this fleshly body, in this dirt suit, if you will, is having a moment reaching out to his Father. And he's asking his Father, I know you can make a way out of no way. And if by chance there is another way, if there's an alternative, hook a brother up. If there's an escape clause out of this particular decision, hey, hook me up. I'm okay with that. 36 tells us, and he said, Abba, Father, all things are possible unto thee. Take away this cup from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what thou wilt. There's no fun in dying. That's what we're finding out. However, there is victory in death. But no one said it would be easy. His divinity addresses God by saying Abba. And then his humanity addresses God by saying Father. For a moment, Jesus is speaking out of his spirit and out of his flesh at the same time. Abba, Father, all things are possible. We all know what's going to happen. We all know he's going to the cross. He's going to lay up his life for all of us. We all know that. But we don't know what it feels like before you get to the cross. Jesus is sharing with us what it feels like. Jesus informed God that I know that you specialize in the impossible, that there's nothing too hard for you. Jesus goes all the way out and asks God, take this responsibility from me. You're shocked, aren't you? Well, don't be shocked. That's what this flesh does. Yeah, to wrestle against this flesh is going to speak out. So don't be shocked. You're wrestling with your flesh right now. It's speaking to you right now. It's been speaking to you for some time. Then Jesus comes to himself after having this human reaction, if you will, and tells the Lord, it's not what I want. Instead, Lord, it's what you want. You know what's best. Jesus tells God, all things are possible unto thee. Take away this cup from me. I had to ask the question, what's in this cup? Jesus don't want this cup. It's not coffee and tea, that's for sure. Jesus don't want this cup. But you can relate as a parent. Oh, you can relate because guess what? The weight of the family is up on your shoulders. And so without a question, you would give your life for your child. You would give your life for your spouse. You would give your life for your parents. You would give your life for your siblings. But let me ask you this question. Would you give your life for a stranger? Would you give your life for a child molester, a drug addict, an individual with a disability? Would you give your life for an individual who's a part of the LGBTQ community? That's what's in this cup. It's mankind and all of mankind's flaws and claws and sins and disobedience and rejection and denial. That's what's in this cup. Jesus has come to die for all of us, for all the stuff that's in that cup. Apostle Paul tells us that God made him, Jesus, who had no sin, to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. So the word tells us that Jesus was away for an hour and he was praying. That 1 hour must have felt like 1 minute because the weight of the world was up on his shoulders and it just felt like time was just of the essence. So when he came back and seen them sleeping, he lit into Simon Peter. He goes after Peter because he sees something in Peter. You see, people don't mess with you if they don't see nothing in you. Because Jesus feels that Simon should feel like he feels. Jesus has this up on his shoulders, and Jesus don't realize that Simon can't feel what he feels because it's not Simon's assignment. Your children can't feel what you feel. You're trying to push something into them, all your education, all your knowledge, all your experience, but they can't sense that because guess what? It's not their assignment. It's not their calling. It's not their gift. It's not their time. This is not their cup. It's yours. See, this is Jesus' cup. And so Simon can't feel the urgency of this cup because it's not his cup. He's going to have his cup down the road. See, too much is given, much is required. Jesus tells Peter, James, and John to watch and pray because temptation is trying to enter in them. This is the third time Jesus has mentioned the word watch. And so we realize he's telling Peter that you should be watchful, which means be on your guard. But also he's telling them to be watchful, not to be slothful. He's telling them not to be reckless. You see, I can see you, but I need more than just my vision. I need to be able to hear you. I need to be able to understand you. You see, watching is understanding. Watching is having experience. Watching is having some insight. It's not just this one time looking out. No. It's also looking in. You have to be watchful of yourself. He's telling them, be watchful of all things. That's what he's telling them. And then in verse 39, and again he went away and prayed and spake the same words. Again, so he prayed up in verse 36. The Bible says, and again he came and said it in verse 39. Abba, Father, all things are possible unto thee. Take away this cup from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what thou wilt. The flesh is still pleading with God to survive. We know that Jesus is torn about this assignment. Who are you and I? Thank God that Jesus came and that he died for you and I, so that he could become the mediator between us and God. So when Jesus returns from praying again, he finds Peter, James, and John sleeping again. Jesus is wide awake. His adrenaline is flowing, is surging. His purpose is upon him. And the time has come for him to lay down his life for mankind. Peter, James, and John are tired and restless because they don't have this weight of mankind on their shoulders. It's not yet their cup bearing season. Therefore, they don't understand the urgency nor the significance of this moment. I told you that everything has a beginning. Therefore, Jesus had to go through all of that just because man changed his diet. Repeat after me. Don't change your diet. Don't change your diet. When you start a garden, you have to become very watchful to ensure your plants are growing. You have to be watchful of the weeds trying to push up against your plants. You have to be watching out for the insects and the creatures and the humans who will try to eat and steal your plants. That's what you have to be watchful for. I mentioned to you that Jesus uses the word watch 3 times in his message. He shares with us how important it is to be watchful. He uses it in verse 34, 37, and 38. The word watch is defined as look at or observe attentively over a period of time. It means to be awake. Listen to me. It means to be woke, as we would say it. It means to be guarded, to look steadily, to be observant, to be cautious, to be suspicious, to be attentive, to be careful, to be diligent and observant for the purpose of preventing or escaping danger. This is a big one. Watch to avoid your own mistakes and misconduct. Be watchful of one's behavior. Be watchful against the growth of vicious habits. Yes, we have some. You see, as parents, we know something about being watchful because we've experienced some things. We've been out there. We bumped our heads and we've gotten it right. And so when we have children, we think we can really guide them through this maze, if you will, called life. But they will rebel against us because they feel like we're trying to run their lives. And some of you probably are. But we want to tell them where some of the pitfalls are. And that's good because we've been there, done that. And so we know where they are. But some children don't want to listen. And so your watchful eye, you got them to this place by watching them, protecting them. And that's probably good enough because sometimes you have to learn on your own. Watch ye, therefore, and pray always, that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. That's Luke 21 and 36. The word watch is more than just looking at it. It can also be understanding what it is. See, that's watching, having a watchful perspective. I'm not just looking at it, I'm understanding what it is that I'm looking at. You see, everybody's watching something. Yeah, while you're watching him, he's watching her, and someone's watching you. Watch all of them. We're always watching something. I pray that whatever you're giving them to see, I pray that it's the Christ likeness that's inside of you. Let me ask you this question before I close. Do you have a Garden of Gethsemane, a place where you spend time being nurtured by the Lord? Let me tell you something, brothers. You need to find a place to where you can detox. You need to find a place where you can unwind, where you can vent, if you will. Jesus was venting in this garden. You need to find a place where you can just lay it all out. You can just talk to God. You need a place. You need to find a room in your house where you can just steal away some time. And if you can't find a place in your house, go out to the park. I've been to the park before. Lay out prostrated, just somewhere where you can sup with God, he can sup with you. It's much needed. Find a place. Jesus lived, he died, he was buried, and he got up on the 3rd day so that you and I could flourish in our life, in our garden of obedience unto him. Paul puts it like this: O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? Because Jesus laid his life down, because Jesus gave his life up on the cross so that you and I could have this opportunity to live for him and sing songs like Almost Let Go. I felt like I couldn't take life anymore. My problems had me bound. Depression weighed me down. But God held me close so I wouldn't let go. Don't this feel like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane talking to God? It feels like me and you talking to the Father right now. God's mercy kept me so I wouldn't let go. I almost gave up. I was right at the edge of a breakthrough, but I couldn't see it. The devil really had me, but Jesus came and grabbed me. That's why he got up on that cross. That's what was in that cup. and he held me close so I wouldn't let go. God's mercy kept me so I wouldn't let go. Thank you, Lord, for your grace. So I am here today because God kept me. I am alive today only because of his grace. Oh, he kept me. God kept me. He kept me so I wouldn't let go. Find your garden of Gethsemane and labor in it so you won't let go. Jesus, we thank you. Happy Resurrection Day. Remember Romans 10:9. Confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, and you too shall be saved. God is God.